Hello, welcome to the morning show with Sybil and Back.
On today's show, a black child born in 1960s Belfast. Tim Brannigan's upbringing was anything but conventional, especially after his own mother, in an attempt to conceal the fact that he was hers, pretended her baby had died and then staged a false adoption. We'll be hearing Tim's incredible story very shortly.
Also, life on the sidelines. 3 GAA wags will be telling us about the highs and lows when your partner is a GAA star.
Plus, our Glee finalists will be pleading for your votes. We'll be chatting to some more of our Get Your Glee On entrants a little bit later on in the show.
Now, growing up on the Falls Road in Belfast in the 60s would have been difficult enough for any child.
But when you're black in a predominantly white area and your own mother pretends you died at childbirth only to stage a false adoption of you, then things become a whole lot tougher.
I'm the result of an extramarital affair between my white mother, an Irish Catholic mother from Belfast, and her lover, who it transpires was a black doctor from west coast of Africa, from Ghana, but she was also still married to a white Belfast man and had 3 children by him. So the state of her marriage was such that she knew this baby is not going to be white, it's going to be black, and I'm in big, big trouble. The first thing she did to keep her husband on side was she told him that she had been raped and that she'd been to see the local priest, and the priest had told her, oh, the power of prayer will, you know, stick together as a family unit, you know, and pray together and do the right thing by this child. And her husband bought that story.
This really is a remarkable story, and Tim Brannigan, thank you very much for joining us on the morning show.
Morning. It's like something from a film, really, isn't it? Like from a drama novel.
There's talk of films and also, and I'm not sure, but I just sort of wanted to make my mum a hero across Ireland, and that's been my little ambition.
Because we have to bear in mind, this was 1960s Ireland, and her marriage was not a good one, and that was the time when she met your birth father. Yeah. But she decided to tell this story to her husband, that she had been raped. Yeah. She arrived at the hospital. She was at full term. It was time for you to be born. What happened there at the hospital?
Well, she went in heavily pregnant, and still hadn't told any of her brothers, 5 older brothers, and she had a sister and a younger brother. She hadn't told any of them. She hadn't told her own children, and probably most pertinent of all, she hadn't told her parents, who were very devout Catholics. And she went into the hospital, and then she just used her powers. So she's a very engaging woman, a very good storyteller, so she used her powers of persuasion to convince the doctors to help her, and luckily she met a doctor who had a bit of humanity about him. I'm sure plenty of doctors have, but this doctor said, right, you know, because he's taking a risk with his own career presumably, and there'd be issues around ethics, but he said, okay, I'll help you. And she told him that she was going to, what the plan was, and what they concocted together was a story, so that when the family came up to see the new baby, the doctor came out and said, very bad news for you. The child, she's lost the baby. And I was whisked away and kept in a separate room just off the main ward. And all the brothers and sisters and everyone and her own children all bought this lie, and the word bought's even wrong, because they just believed, you know. It's not that they were mugs, they just believed.
Well, people in authority, be it in church, with judiciary, or in a hospital, they were believed when they told a story to somebody.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They were the great and the good, and as one of my uncles said, you know, when a white coat and a stethoscope, you know, and there wasn't this whole freedom of information era, and we're all used to now and going online to double check what your doctor's just told you. So in those days, you believed doctor knows best.
So she had to pretend to be grieving for the next few months. And where did you go? How did she hide you?
Well, she was in the hospital for 5 days, and I was just kept in a little ante room, or a little room offside, and then she was allowed to leave to go back home, and her family came up to collect her, and just in a sort of fluke of timing, as she was getting into the car outside the hospital to be taken back home, a nurse stepped out and got into a taxi just in front of her with me wrapped up. And so she knew what was going on, and immediately had, was distraught and was in floods of tears. And her brothers and her husband were thinking, well, it's the baby she's lost, and that would account for this sudden
emotion.
Emotion is the word I'm looking for.
But you were heading off to an orphanage.
But she could see me being taken away by a nurse, and as a mother, any Irish mother across the land is going to think, my goodness, it's my son being taken away by a stranger and is going to be put in an orphanage. So
but had she not told the orphanage under under strict orders that you weren't to be adopted by anybody, that she was coming back to get you?
Yeah, exactly. There's a big ledger, like something out of a Dickens novel. There's a big leather-bound ledger, and it said, Farley's Rusk, or Farley's sort of supplement, like Farley's Rusks thing. And my weight at the time that I was brought up, and then there's a section over on the right-hand side sort of said comments, and it just said not for adoption.
Like, this does really sound like a great film plot, because everything just clicks into place. Your mother was voluntarily working at this same orphanage, so she would take children home at the weekend. So she got to take you home at the weekend.
Yeah. She was asked as a 13-year-old girl to help out at the orphanage, and kept up. She loved children anyway, so she kept up her role as a volunteer and would take them to local parks and to the River Lagan and Bellevue Zoo. And but she had this affinity for the black children, because it was like a buyer's market. There were up to 150 kids in any one year. I think in the year '66 there were 150 kids there. So as long as people had a home, and a sort of decent home, and a regular income, they could. I was almost as much of a check as there was. So they came up and they would choose the little blonde girl or the little black-haired boy, but they tended, well, almost exclusively, they ignored disabled children and the black children. And there were a few black children over the years, because Belfast was a port, and so the local girls might have a bit of a dalliance with black sailors from around the world, and would get caught out. And my mum knew that the black children were never getting adopted, and so what she used to do was bring them home at the weekends. They owned a fish and chip shop, and so she would give them fish and chips on a Saturday night, and some sweets and chocolate, and then on a Sunday, a proper Sunday dinner. And then bring them back. So
she eventually did adopt you. Did anyone growing up, I mean, you didn't know that she was your real mum. Did anyone twig, your brothers and sisters? I mean, no. Did anyone think you had a resemblance to your mother? I mean, did anyone have any idea, looking back now?
I was speaking to a neighbour yesterday about it, and she was saying, a girl my age, she was saying, you were just wee Tim. We just grew up, you were Tim. She said, see, to be honest, I was a teenager before I realised you were even black, let alone worry about adoption,
Yeah, but isn't that healthy to hear that?
Absolutely, yeah. The colour blindness of children is great, and I go around and speak in schools and all now, and discuss race and prejudice and all that, and it's great. And there's a lot of very healthy. Obviously, there's some negative attitudes, but there's a lot of very healthy attitudes there, and children are keen to explore the issues. But there must have been, if you're realistic about it, I suspect that there must have been people who were glancing out of the curtains and thinking, oh, what's going on there, and that's all too convenient.
Bit convenient.